When we were kids, Angus and I were both bullied, but he fell for the girl who tormented him. To win her over, he left me stranded on the highway. A speeding bus came crashing into me. In that moment before I died, I thought the biggest regret of my life was having feelings for Angus. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in high school, at 18. This time, when Julie dumped dirty water on Angus, I didn't step in front of him to protect him. Stupid orphan, nobody loves you. Haha, pretending to be so high and mighty. The summer sun shone brightly in the noisy classroom as I found myself back in high school. Julie poured dirty water from a glass bottle onto Angus. Behind her were several of her cronies. It stinks. Laughter erupted from the crowd. Angus stood there helpless, soaked, like a poor little animal. I lay still on my desk, curious about why a normal person would develop feelings for someone who bullied them. Actually, Angus and I were childhood friends. Orphans, we grew up together in an orphanage, and the fees for our schooling were covered by it. In my last life, Angus struggled with extreme self-hatred due to constant bullying, and I was always there to pull him out of the mud. After the college entrance exam, we went to the same university. By our third year, we started a business together. He handled project planning while I managed external communications. Over 4 years, we hired employees, established the company, and our revenue hit over 100 million. I thought we could keep moving forward together. But then Julie returned. Her father's company went bankrupt. At a banquet, she cried to Angus, "Please, I'll do anything. I beg you to save my dad." Angus shot her a cold glance. "What can you give me?" Despite saying that, he kept Julie around, investing a large sum into her father's failing company and fulfilling her every whim. He treated her so well, it was almost absurd. I even stormed into Angus's office to confront him. "Do you even know what you're doing? That company is a bottomless pit, a mess of debt. You're risking all our hard work from the past few years." He looked at me, shook his head, and sighed, "Lola, you don't understand me." I really didn't understand him. After he let Julie slap me, I decided to leave Angus. But we were too intertwined financially to separate easily, especially with a major project coming up that required both of us. I never expected he would bring Julie along to that project. I lost my temper for the first time. This was a plan I had spent a whole year preparing. What was he thinking, bringing Julie into it? But she said to him, "Angus, if Lola hates me so much, why don't you just leave her here?" After Julie dumped dirty water on him, Angus instinctively looked back at me. Every time he was bullied, I would immediately stand up for him, fiercely confronting Julie, even though I knew I was no match for her. She was a rich kid, surrounded by a group of troublemakers, all of whom were no pushovers. I glanced away, deliberately ignoring his pleading gaze. "This time, even Lola won't help you." So funny. What are you going to do? Keep crying, or beg for mercy? Ha ha ha. I listened to their taunts, feeling nothing, even yawning. In my last life, I became Julie's target because I helped Angus. If I had stayed out of it, I could have avoided all this. "Lola, what's going on? Why are you just sitting there?" Julie approached, not believing her eyes, and knocked on my desk. I picked up my textbook and flipped through it. "I'm not his mom, I'm not obligated to take care of him." Hearing this, Angus's face fell. His eyes turned red, his hands clenched tightly, he whispered my name, "Lola." I sighed in annoyance and shrugged off his hand. "Don't call me Lola anymore." I grabbed my bag and walked over to Julie's seat. I could guess why she wanted to switch seats, partly because of her deskmate, Saxon. I stole a glance at the gloomy boy sitting next to her, staying quiet as I arranged my books. In my last life, I didn't interact much with Saxon, but I still had a strong impression of him. He came from a wealthy family, his father was a well-known real estate businessman, and his mother was an artist. His life should have been smooth sailing. However, he was in a serious car accident in elementary school, which left him disabled from the knee down and unable to stand. From then on, he was confined to a wheelchair. Saxon was quiet and rarely spoke to those around him. Although Julie was brash, she didn't dare cross him. Most of what I knew about him came from ranking after exams, where his name often appeared at the top. I thought his talents and family background would lead to a bright future, but that wasn't the case. It wasn't until a college reunion that I learned he had passed away. He couldn't bear the weight of being disabled anymore. Lola, get up and answer this question. I was lost in thought when my name was suddenly called. I realized class had started. Physics class. A balding middle-aged physics teacher glared at me from the podium. In my last life, I felt he had an inexplicable dislike for me, perhaps because physics was my weakest subject. Looking at the long list of problems on the board, I took a deep breath, trying to recall what I learned in high school, hesitantly speaking out my solution. Is that all? The physics teacher tapped the podium with the eraser. Lola, your level has dropped. I was at a loss for words. It wasn't my level that had dropped, it was just that my brain hadn't done any problems in years. Just as I was feeling awkward, a note was suddenly passed to me. It was neatly written with concise and effective methods, along with the answers. Saxon, my deskmate, still hadn't looked up, his long fingers were gently turning a page in his textbook. That page covered the material for the day. He was saving me. I glanced at him gratefully, and with my confidence returning, I began to speak out the answer. Saxon truly was a genius, able to come up with such an excellent method in such a short time. All right, sit down, the teacher said dismissively, criticizing me casually. Pay attention in class and don't zone out. Make sure to consider the second situation. I suddenly realized that the aloof and gloomy boy might not be as scary as he seems. He could just be sensitive and vulnerable. I grew up in an orphanage, surrounded by children who had gone through similar experiences as I did. Some lost both parents and had relatives who wouldn't take care of them, so they ended up here. Some were born with disabilities, blind or with serious physical issues, abandoned at the door of the orphanage. Only a few lucky ones grew up carefree and happy. Many were insecure and introverted, clearly longing for attention, but too afraid to take the first step. Even though Saxon came from a wealthy family, he was actually quite similar to us. I wanted to give it a try, to be the one who first extends the olive branch. More importantly, although I had always excelled in high school, after all this time, I had forgotten most of the foundational knowledge. I really needed someone to help me catch up. I decided to ask him for help. The next day, I brought some cookies I had made and placed them on Saxon's desk. He paused, his hand still holding the pen. He looked up and stared directly at me. I tried to show a sincere smile. Saxon, thanks for helping me in physics class yesterday, consider this my thank you gift. He glanced at the cookies and asked casually, you made these? Yeah, I said, feeling confident about my cooking skills. There weren't many caregivers at the orphanage, so since I was 6 or 7, I had to learn to take care of myself. Doing laundry, cleaning, cooking, these were all part of my daily routine. Angus was so frail as a child that sometimes older kids would take his lunch. To make sure he didn't go hungry, I would sneak into the kitchen at night to see if there was anything I could cook. I learned to make cookies during those times. He casually picked one up and took a bite. Not bad, right? I asked nervously. Saxon didn't respond. He lightly tapped his finger on the table, as if he could see through my thoughts. You're a bit weak in electromagnetism. I nodded quickly. He gently pushed a workbook toward me, flipping it open to the middle. Start here, focus on the problems I've marked. So, just like that, I managed to close the distance with Saxon a bit through a box of cookies. After that, I often brought a few snacks along. They weren't expensive, mostly things I made myself in the morning. He and I shared similar habits, both liking to review knowledge in the early morning. During the break after our morning study session, as I was diving into Saxon's workbook, a sudden, panicked shout came from 2 rows ahead. It was Angus's voice. Caught off guard, I instinctively looked up in that direction. Almost all my classmates were drawn to the commotion, those further away even leaned forward, curious to see. Angus stood up from his seat, his face pale, his lips moving without sound. There was a piece of clay on the desk, stained with red dots. If you looked closely, you could see several sharp, jagged pieces sticking out from inside. It looked like someone had sliced a blade into sharp pieces and stuffed them inside. Oh my God, blood, it's bleeding, a girl by the aisle shouted. That's when I noticed Angus's hand hanging by his side, with a clear wound, dripping blood onto the floor. You didn't even last 10 seconds, how did you let go? Julie rolled her eyes, poking Angus's stomach with a ruler. You lost this round. Angus lowered his head, his voice soft. I didn't know there were knives inside the clay. Please don't play such dangerous games. Such a buzzkill. Julie's expression dropped. She put away the ruler and slammed it down on the desk. With a loud clap, it bounced onto the chair in front of her. After watching for a while, many people had figured out what was going on. It was just that the princess was bored today and had come up with new ways to bully the weaker students. Julie, you scared the poor thing to death today. He looks like he's about to cry. A few of her friends leaned in, whispering in her ear. Julie huffed and turned her head to look at Angus. He had just sat down, appearing dazed. Hey, are you really going to cry? Julie suddenly pushed him hard. How about this, I'll take you to the school nurse, it'd be bad if you get infected. Angus blinked, looking up in confusion. I was busy copying a difficult problem from the blackboard when our eyes met. He shook his head. No need, I can handle it myself. In the past, Angus was always behind me. This was the first time I observed their interaction so directly. It felt strangely curious. Julie is quite something, Saxon said, tossing a folded paper crane into a glass jar. She slaps you and then gives you candy, it's a form of mind control. I noticed on my first day that he had this hobby of origami, which didn't match his cool persona. I looked at him, signaling him to continue. Constant physical torment, verbal abuse. Just when you're on the brink of despair and can't take it anymore, she'll pat your head and comfort you a little, and you'll feel so grateful, ashamed for all your past struggles and resistance. People might even develop a false sense of gratitude, thinking, wow, she's so nice to me. Is that how it is? My mind was a jumble as I poked at the draft paper with my pen. I didn't even notice when Angus came up beside me. Lola. He stood by my desk, his shadow falling over my pages. My hand is hurt, can you help me bandage it? In the past, without him saying anything, I would have jumped at the chance to take his hand and fetch some alcohol and bandages. No, maybe I wouldn't have allowed him to get hurt in the first place. I would have grabbed Julie by the collar and pinned her down, telling her, want to play a game? I'll play with you. But now, I knew some people weren't worth your effort. The school nurse is on duty 24 hours, I think you know where it is, I replied coldly, focusing back on the half-finished problem in front of me. But, Angus forced a weak smile, putting his hand directly on my desk. Lola, it really hurts. I could see that his wound was deep. Blood was still oozing out, even dripping onto my desk. I was really getting annoyed. I didn't know if it was because I had been too good to Angus in the past that he had developed this habit of relying on me. Move your hand away, it's dirty, Saxon suddenly interjected, looking up from his textbook. He grabbed a few paper towels and tossed them over. Quick, wipe it off. If you want to play such a dumb game, don't mess up other people's desks. The air froze for a moment. I had to admit, Saxon knew how to hit where it hurts. Angus slowly suppressed his smile, his back straightening little by little. He actually picked up the paper towels Saxon threw, gripping them tightly and wiping his wound. Some of the paper scraps stuck to the surface, looking painful. He had a certain pride in him. Let's switch seats, he said, looking Saxon in the eye. Lola and I have always been desk partners, there's no need to separate us. Oh, and why should I care? Saxon laughed. I like this spot and don't want to move at all. Besides, shouldn't you ask Lola if she wants to sit with you? Saxon took another piece of paper from his metal box and casually began folding another crane. The question was thrown my way. But Angus didn't ask me. As if he was afraid to know the answer from me. Fortunately, the class bell rang. The homeroom teacher walked in carrying a large stack of papers. She glanced at Angus and exclaimed, "Oh my God, what happened?" With the teacher's intervention, the subtly charged atmosphere in the classroom finally came to a halt. This wound looks like it was caused by a sharp object. The homeroom teacher walked over, grabbing Angus's wrist, frowning seriously. How can you do something so dangerous in the classroom? Tell me what happened. I guessed he wouldn't say Julie's name. Sure enough, Angus bit his lip and didn't say a word. The teacher was clearly unhappy with his silence. She pointed to a student who was looking down. You tell us what happened during the break last class. The girl looked down, hesitating before finally saying, I went to the bathroom, so I don't know. No one wanted to offend Julie. The teacher sighed, showing a look of helplessness. She asked the class monitor to take Angus to the nurse's office before starting the lesson. In the days following this incident, there was a brief calm between Julie and Angus. It seemed like everything had passed. Then, just as midterms came up, I was busy preparing and didn't have time to pay attention to the two of them. Meanwhile, Saxon and I seemed to have more and more common topics to talk about. I was surprised to find that when I was in elementary school, I had even been to the affluent neighborhood where Saxon lived. At that time, a wealthy businessman had donated a significant sum to our school. He was very old, had no children, and his only wish was to have kids who could visit him. In the year before he passed away, we went to see him almost every month. Sometimes we would sing for him or chat, other times we would just quietly listen to him talk about the past. I recalled this coincidence while wheeling Saxon down the hallway. From the initial indifference to now allowing me to help him navigate the school, our relationship had progressed remarkably. When I was in a good mood, he would even let me push him for a quick sprint on the playground. I couldn't help but raise my voice and say, Saxon, we might have met before. He ignored me. Even so, I thought that even if we had crossed paths years ago, we probably wouldn't remember each other after all this time. Just as we reached the corner of the stairs, I suddenly heard Julie and her friend's voices. First, I heard her lackey complain. Julie, your dad hasn't yelled at you lately, right? I've never liked that homeroom teacher. It's ridiculous to call our parents over such a small thing. It must be that bastard Angus who reported it. Julie stomped her foot and snorted, I was too nice to him the other day and even changed seats with Saxon. I have to teach him a lesson. After saying this, Julie forcefully knocked on the door of the adjacent classroom. The iron door creaked, it was locked. Let's go, don't worry about it, someone said. After those girls laughed and left down the stairs, I wheeled Saxon out. That classroom was a storage room. The dark green painted door led to old equipment and teaching materials, opened only once every few months. It didn't even have windows, and was dim and gloomy. Watching Julie and her friends leave, I felt something was off. From what they said, it seemed the homeroom teacher must have called Julie's parents after Angus was hurt, and they suspected Angus had reported it. Though it was almost certain it wasn't as they thought, given their personalities, they would undoubtedly seek revenge. I glanced at the storage room. What if they locked Angus in there? Honestly, what happened to Angus had nothing to do with me. But I suddenly remembered he might have claustrophobia. Angus had been sent to the orphanage by the police. He was very young, around 4 or 5. The neighbors called the police because of a terrible smell coming from his home. When the police arrived, they found both his parents dead. He had hidden in a wardrobe for several days. If it hadn't been for a caring female officer who opened the door, he might have been overlooked. When Angus was carried out by the female officer, he was covered in wounds, marks from a belt, hits from a chair, and scratches from fingernails digging into his skin. The neighbor stood at the door, covering their nose with their hand, saying with disgust, that couple had mental issues and argued every day. When they were in a bad mood, they'd beat the kid. We heard the child crying every night, it was unbearable. I thought they'd take the boy with them, but at least they had some conscience and left him alive. During Angus's first self-introduction at the orphanage, he said, I'm Angus. One child laughed, what a weird name. Your parents must really hate you. Angus's gaze darted around nervously. Later, he told me, Lola, I envy you. Your parents died saving people. My parents always hit me. Sometimes, when they're tired of hitting me, my mom locks me in the closet for a long time, only letting me out when she remembers. But I'm so scared of the dark, and I've told her countless times, but she never believes me. Lola, I really wish my parents loved me. What did I say back then? I took Angus's wrist and said, don't be afraid, I won't let anyone bully you again. I raised my hand and knocked on the storage room door. If Angus was locked in that dark, closed space, he might feel anxious, suffocated, and even harm himself. Just as I leaned to listen for any sounds from inside, my sleeve was suddenly tugged. Saxon frowned, looking a bit unwell. Lola, I don't feel good. I crouched down and asked, what's wrong? He held his stomach. It hurts. If something happened to Saxon, I wouldn't be able to handle it alone. I quickly pushed him to the nurse's office, rushing in and shouting, "Teacher, there's a student who's not feeling well." The nurse in a white coat came out from the back room. Seeing Saxon, she exclaimed, "Saxon." I was taken aback, thinking Saxon must be a regular visitor to the nurse's office. "What's going on today?" The nurse washed her hands and took the wheelchair from me, pushing it inside. She glanced at me and nodded. "You're his classmate? Please wait here." I agreed and sat on a bed in the outer area. There was a curtain separating the inside from the outside. Though I couldn't see, I could faintly hear their conversation. After a while, the nurse's voice came through. "There's nothing wrong. Have you been eating regularly these days? It's nothing serious, just remember to go for checkups every so often. If you feel unwell, just call me." Soon, the nurse wheeled Saxon back out. He was looking down, making it hard to see his expression. I wondered to myself if something was wrong with Saxon's health. If he hadn't felt unwell, why had he dragged me to the nurse's office? Lost in my thoughts, I didn't speak for a while. It was Saxon who broke the silence, coughing a couple of times and looking up at me. "Lola, I have something I want to give you." "What is it?" It was gym class time. Most students were out on the playground. Saxon and I had sneaked out. I originally wanted him to help me with some problems, but we ended up running into Julie and her group, which threw off our plans. I tilted my head and asked, "A gift? For me?" Saxon nodded slightly. "In the classroom." I thought it might be a small gift in return for the cookies I often brought him in the morning. But it wasn't. He pulled out a glass jar from his desk, filled with the origami cranes he had folded. They were in various colors, probably a few hundred of them. I was stunned, momentarily speechless, and ended up asking a really inappropriate question. "Saxon, how did you get such a weird hobby?" As soon as I said it, I realized how rude I sounded. I hadn't even said thank you when someone gave me a gift, and instead, I was babbling nonsense. I immediately blushed and nervously shook my hand. That's not what I meant." But Saxon wasn't angry. He looked at me seriously and smiled. "Lola, the first origami crane I ever got was from you." His expression didn't seem like he was joking at all. 10 years ago, he opened the jar and took one out, placing it in my hand. "Do you remember? 10 years ago." It turned out that the year I visited the wealthy old man with the orphanage caretaker, I had really met Saxon. Memories flooded back in an instant. At that time, I occasionally saw a little boy sitting alone in a wheelchair. His home was not far from the wealthy man's house, with a beautiful garden. He would often be there, a thin blanket over his legs, quietly looking outside. There were many disabled children in the orphanage, so we were used to it. But his eyes looked especially lonely and sad. On my last visit, I pulled a paper crane out of my backpack. I had folded it out of colorful paper while bored at the rich man's house. I ran over, reaching my hand through the railing from the garden and handed it to him. "This is for you." He didn't say a word, just looked at me. "That old man said," I pointed to the wealthy man's house, "that origami cranes can fly you to the sky. Here's one for you, to see beyond this garden." I held the little folded paper. So the origami crane from 10 years ago had come back to me. "I'd been waiting for you to return," Saxon said softly. He gently tapped the glass jar, then I started folding paper. "You would come on weekends, so I folded one each weekend, like a lonely child making a wish, but you never came back." I sat down. In that moment, I even felt a twinge of guilt. I didn't realize my small action had such a big impact on Saxon. He looked up at the sky outside, as if reminiscing. At that time, I had an accident and my leg was ruined. Everything felt bleak. My family was wealthy, with the best doctors treating me, and my parents still seemed to care, but I knew I would never be like others again. When you came, my mother had just gotten pregnant. She smiled and asked me, "Saxon, you're going to have a little brother, are you happy?" I wasn't happy, I felt abandoned, but I couldn't express it. If I did, everyone would think I was selfish. "So, Lola, when you said that the origami crane could take me away, I really wanted to go with you." At that moment, Saxon showed his vulnerable side for the first time. Afraid of being left behind, afraid of being seen as an outcast. I took a deep breath and finally said, "Saxon, this time no one will abandon you." He tilted his head, a slightly puzzled smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. Really, even if it's Angus, you would still choose me? I was a bit taken aback. Why compare yourself to that guy? I have nothing to do with him. Yeah, Lola, he's not worth it. Saxon reached out and held my fingers. I sometimes wondered why, since Saxon had known me so early, he never mentioned it in the past life. Back then, we were like two parallel lines, moving straight in the same direction, yet with no intersection. Much later, when we were already in college, he took over an important department in his father's company while I was preparing to continue my studies. On weekends, we went on coffee dates. I was munching on formulas from my textbooks when he leaned over to play with my hair. Then I suddenly thought of something. Saxon, if I hadn't sat next to you in high school, wouldn't we have gone our separate ways? He shook his head, saying smugly, I would have written you love letters. When you saw them, you'd be moved to tears by our fate. I lightly tapped his head. I took that as just him being casual. After all, in my previous life, I never saw any love letters. I closed the lid on the origami crane jar and put it in my backpack. After a while, the bell rang to end gym class. Students gradually returned to the classroom. Julie and her friends were in there, giggling and looking very happy. There were 2 study periods in the afternoon before school ended. During these periods, many students would leave early, packing their things to go home. Without a teacher to supervise, a third of the classroom might be empty. And this time, Angus was also absent. By the next morning, Angus still hadn't shown up. The homeroom teacher's class was the second period, and she quickly noticed some students were missing. Is Angus absent? She called the class leader over. The class leader shook his head, clearly unaware of the situation. Due to Angus's special circumstances, his parents couldn't be contacted, and the only way to reach his guardian was to call the orphanage. Although it was inconvenient, it seemed to be the only option. I recalled the scene yesterday when I saw Julie and the others in front of the warehouse. I never thought they would dare to play such a prank, locking Angus in the warehouse for so long. If things dragged on, it could get serious. Teacher, I think I heard some noise by the warehouse yesterday. I raised my hand and stood up. The warehouse? The homeroom teacher was startled, then quickly understood, pointing to a few students. Class leader, Lola, you all come with me. After a moment's thought, she pointed at Julie, you come too. When the security guard arrived with the keys, the warehouse was quickly opened. It was pitch dark inside, with a smell like rusting metal in the damp air. The ground was littered with various unused sports equipment, and I had to be careful not to trip with each step. The guard spent a while looking for the light switch on the wall in the hallway, before finally finding it. As the lights turned on, they were so bright that I nearly squinted my eyes. Isn't that Angus? Someone suddenly shouted. Oh my God, what happened to him? Someone call 120. Angus was curled up in the corner by a cabinet, tightly hugging himself with his arms. Next to him was a hard metal piece that had fallen from some equipment. His arms were covered in deep cuts from the sharp edges. He slowly raised his head, revealing his wet eyes, but there was no sparkle in them. He whispered, Dad, Mom. Lola, I'm scared. Lola, Angus saw me right away. He trembled as he stood up, pushing through the crowd to stand in front of me, hugging me tightly. Lola, I knew you would come, you would definitely come find me. His voice was filled with grievance, confusion, and a cautious reliance. You said you would never leave me. He extended his arms, showing me the deep and shallow wounds. It hurts. But I told myself, you wouldn't abandon me. It would take a while for the ambulance to arrive. Seeing the students like this, the homeroom teacher's earlier anxiety turned into anger. Who pulled this prank? No one saying? If no one talks, we'll check the surveillance. This kind of atmosphere in class has been going on for a while, it needs to be dealt with. After saying that, she stormed out of the warehouse, ordering the security to take her to the monitoring room and telling the class leader to inform her when the doctor arrived. Damn, that's really low. Snitching is your specialty, huh? You little sneak. Julie leaned against the wall with her arms crossed, looking coldly at us. I pushed Angus aside, staring at her. What do you mean? What do you mean? Don't you understand? Weren't you just reporting to the homeroom teacher in class? Trying to get me in trouble, huh? If I really get in trouble, you all won't get off easy either. Not long ago, she went to mess with Angus by herself, and I didn't want to get involved. But today she came over again, flaunting her power and causing trouble. Why should I put up with it? I was about to walk over and argue my point when Angus suddenly stepped in front of me. Julie, it was you who locked me in the storage room. You have no reason to talk about Lola like that. In this life and the last. This was the first time he stood up to Julie for me. Julie was clearly as surprised as I was, both of us not expecting this. After a brief moment of shock, her displeasure showed, and she raised her hand, slapping Angus across the face. What's wrong with Lola? I can say whatever I want about her. What are you babbling about, Angus? You're so funny, do you like her or something? Seeing the situation get out of control, the class monitor jumped in to mediate. Hey, we're all classmates. Let's just talk it out. Julie, don't be impulsive. Angus, just apologize. But our monitor was known for being weak-willed. His feeble words couldn't calm the chaos. Julie grabbed Angus by the collar, her words dripping with mockery. You little orphan, I suggest you give up. Your Lola doesn't want you anymore. She's been with that lame guy, Saxon, from our class for a while now. Sure, he's disabled, but his family's rich and he studies well. What do you have? Besides being able to compete with him in looks, honestly, what do you, a poor little orphan, have? Shut up. Angus's face instantly darkened. He looked panicked, but he didn't dare look at me, just tightened his grip on Julie, repeating, shut up, I want you to shut up. I won't. Didn't you know? Yesterday afternoon, those two skipped gym class and snuck into the classroom, who knows what they were up to. After school, someone saw them holding hands. Your Lola was so happy. Angus suddenly became extremely agitated. Maybe it was because he had been trapped in a dark place for so long, that anxious feeling hadn't left him at all. He suddenly gripped Julie's neck, growling low, I want you to stop talking. Don't you get it? At that moment, he didn't look like the weak, pitiful student who used to get bullied. He looked more like the decisive and ruthless leader he would become in the business world. I suddenly felt a sense of dread. I rushed over, trying to grab Angus's arm. But I was too late. He pushed Julie to the railing, his eyes red, voice trembling, you're the real bitch. Who allowed you to spread rumors? Julie was clearly startled. But used to being willful and arrogant, she didn't back down. What do you mean rumors? It's the truth, who knows, maybe they've even slept together. As she shouted and struggled. Before she could finish, Angus grabbed her neck and pulled hard. The two started grappling, and suddenly, Angus flipped and yanked Julie off the corridor. And they both fell down. The monitor and I rushed to the railing. 6 stories up, they just tangled and fell. People around were panicking and shouting. I ran down frantically, getting closer and closer. Close enough that the blood pooling under Angus seemed to spread to my feet. The ambulance finally arrived. But it was too late. When the medical personnel got out of the ambulance, they seemed a bit unclear about what was happening. Aren't we dealing with claustrophobia? What's going on now? Make way, make way. Why are there still 2 of them? I slowly stepped back. The crowd began to engulf me. Someone grabbed my hand, warm and comforting. Lola, are you okay? I turned to see Saxon. He looked at me quietly. My throat tightened. After a long pause, I finally spoke, Saxon, they both died. He said, but I'll be with you from now on. Always. The sky that day was so blue, and I saw in Saxon's eyes that I was the only one for him. I felt a bit lost, unsure of what to do. Later, in certain moments, I'd occasionally think of Angus. What was he feeling when he pushed Julie down? Was it rage, helplessness, or fear? But no matter what, my life was really no longer connected to him. The one I loved was the one who cared for me wholeheartedly, the one who had only me in his heart. Extra, Angus. I can't reach Lola anymore. No replies to texts, no calls going through, this is the first time. For a moment, I thought maybe she was still mad at me for taking Julie to the startup conference. But then I felt Lola was being unreasonable. She should know that Julie doesn't have much ability and needs some impressive credentials to back her up. Until one day, after a meeting, I received a phone call. I felt inexplicably restless all day. Julie was nearby making coffee, and I casually put the call on speaker. "Hello, sir, this is the police station. We were handling a traffic accident at the highway exit a few days ago, and a young woman was killed. We're not sure if you know her." My temples throbbed. Julie placed the coffee next to me. The damn officer kept talking. "Because she had no parents or relatives, we found that her most contacted friend is you. Would you be able to come in regarding Lola's funeral?" I suddenly threw my phone away. Damn it, what are you talking about? The call ended with a beep. Liars. Julie crossed her arms, leaning against the wall, looking at me coldly. "Didn't you see the news? A few days ago, on the highway we passed for the meeting, a bus lost control and killed a woman." For the first time, I found Julie repulsive, abruptly cutting her off. "Get out." She looked at me incredulously. "What did you say?" I repeated, "Get lost." "Fine, you said it yourself." "Angus, don't beg me to come back. Lola can't be dead. A long time ago, back at the orphanage, she told me she wouldn't leave me behind. So when I went to the police station and saw her body, I still couldn't believe it. I tightly clenched my fists. I realized I was afraid of the truth. So afraid that I was shaking. "Just sign here?" The officer's voice was cold and bureaucratic. My voice was hoarse. What I really wanted to ask was whether she said anything before she died. But I knew there wouldn't be anything, let alone a word about me. Since then, I found my emotions becoming increasingly unstable. I became irritable and angry, often slipping into waves of emptiness and confusion. I returned to the orphanage. Donated a large sum of money, and the director treated me like a big shot. "Sir, our caregivers often mention you to the kids, saying they want to use you as a role model." I looked at the children. They were just like I was back then, small and pitiful. But I didn't feel close to them, instead, I felt a bit annoyed. "I want to take a walk around the grounds." The director didn't suspect a thing, thinking I was just reminiscing about my childhood. I walked alone to the dorm area. The kids were taken out by the caregivers for activities, leaving it empty. I opened the door and immediately saw the room where Lola used to stay. Of course, her things were no longer there. But I still felt like I could see traces of her existence. Like that small single bed, the chipped nightstand, and the wooden wardrobe. I closed my eyes, recalling the times I would joyfully come here to find her at night. I vaguely felt like she was still here, sitting at the edge of the bed waiting for me. My Lola, my Lola. I opened the wardrobe and hid inside. Would my Lola come looking for me? 2 days later, my assistant finally found me. He couldn't get in touch with me, and his calls weren't going through, so he drove to the orphanage out of desperation. The director thought I had disappeared without a word. After checking the surveillance footage, they discovered I was hiding in a child's wardrobe. Everyone was shocked. I could no longer hide my unstable mental state. The company hired a well-known psychiatrist for me. She was a nearly retired expert, with a gentle and soothing voice, guiding me to talk about my past little by little. "So, you were the one who left Lola on the highway, right?" Yes, I closed my eyes, my mind feeling like it had been hit by a heavy hammer. Julie even reminded me that there were no cameras there, and no one would see it. My heart was overwhelmed with waves of regret and pain. I wanted to go back to the past and change everything. But the doctor didn't seem to blame me at all. She simply asked, "Have you thought about why you're so forgiving towards Julie? She bullied you, humiliated you, looked down on you. Do you really like her?" I shook my head. I couldn't answer that question. After a long pause, I said, "I just wish she would treat me better." "Maybe you're just projecting your feelings for others onto her." The doctor poured me a glass of warm water. "The lack of paternal and maternal love in your childhood makes you feel like you're missing a piece of yourself. Perhaps Julie's presence just reminds you of those darkest experiences. She has made your life so bleak, yet sometimes she gives you just a little sweetness. That tiny kindness, which wouldn't matter to an ordinary person, is magnified under the pain she brings. But you forget about the girl who has always been with you, helping you grow, and never wanting to hurt you. Angus, you need to learn to love. Don't let yourself be manipulated." When I got to the villa, I found that Julie had come back. She was sprawled on the sofa, and when she saw me enter, she jumped up and hugged my neck. Angus, you're back. I heard you went to the hospital? Something felt off about the villa. I pushed her away. Where are Lola's things? I snapped. She didn't take it seriously. What's the point of keeping things from a dead person? It's bad luck. I was almost driven mad with rage. Those were my last memories of Lola, and she had thrown them away. I trembled and suddenly slapped Julie hard. She stared at me wide-eyed. Slowly, a strange smile crept across her lips. Angus, you're really disgusting. Do you know what I found in your desk today? A love letter to Lola from Saxon back in high school. Turns out they knew each other since elementary school. If it weren't for you, Lola might have ended up with Saxon long ago. It's you withheld Saxon's love letter, making him think Lola didn't remember him or like him at all. If they had been together, would Lola still be dead? Julie always had a way of hitting my weak spots precisely. Yes, ultimately, it was my fault that Lola died. Julie stepped closer to me, her hand slowly gliding over my face and stopping at my throat, gently squeezing. Admit it, Angus, we're meant to be together. Her voice was low and seductive. I'm the twisted one, you're the worthless one. If we're going to hell, let's go together. Let Lola's pure and innocent spirit ascend to heaven. She stood on her tiptoes, as if she wanted to kiss me. Yes, someone so vicious, manipulative, and full of desire. We should die together. I opened the drawer of the desk and pulled out a gun. Once at a banquet, a senior from a rival company tried to insult Lola, and I smashed a bottle over his head in anger. But I could never feel completely secure. So I bought a gun, just in case something like that happened again, hoping Lola would never be hurt. Julie, no one will ever like you, a woman as vile and cruel as you are. I pressed the gun against her chest and pulled the trigger. She looked at me in disbelief. Blood drenched me. The last bullet. I saved it for myself. End.